Welcome to Permaculture Jordan. My name is Joe.
And my name is Anzel, and we are today in Amman, the capital of Jordan. Right down here below us is downtown Amman. And Joe and I, we both live and work in Amman and have done so for quite a few years now. And we both work in various aspects of the environmental field.
And in this series of videos, we are going to look at Jordan with a focus on land use, sustainable agriculture, regenerative design. Anything else?
Permaculture?
Permaculture, really?
Permaculture.
Okay, and permaculture. Yeah, and in this first episode, Anselm is going to give us Anselm is going to give us a general introduction to the Jordanian context.
So we look at Jordan in terms of land use, historical perspective of land use in Jordan, going from ancient times till now. And we've made a kind of slightly odd map animation. Let's see if that works.
The geographic area that is today called Jordan lies at the edge between the Arabian Desert, stretching to the south and east, covering most of the Arabian Peninsula, and the Fertile Crescent to the north, which stretches from Mesopotamia through Syria, Lebanon, Palestine towards Egypt. And although there has been a lot of trade, mostly from east to west along the Silk Route, which created some affluent trader communities, it has been these two environments, the desert and the Fertile Crescent, that have shaped the two main livelihoods of human societies in Jordan over the centuries and millennia from early history until quite recently, which is the settled and sedentary villagers and the nomadic Bedouin. The sedentary villagers lived mostly from agriculture, which first developed in Mesopotamia and the Iranian highlands, and from where it's spread to Jordan as early as 10,000 years ago during the Neolithic age, when it first started being practiced in the Jordan Valley near Jericho. Later on, agriculture also spread and was used both spring-fed and rain-fed in the highlands east of the Jordan Valley, on the northern highlands as well as the southern highlands. These highlands really are what forms the edge between the Fertile Crescent and the Eastern Desert.
So the nomadic Bedouin living in the desert towards the southeast, they've lived traditionally from herding camels, goats and sheep, and some of these tribes stretched from as far south as Yemen all the way into what is now Jordan, Syria or Iraq. Those Bedouins who would live on the western edge of the desert close to the highlands, they might spend, for example, their winters in the Jordan Valley, and then their springs and summers out in the desert, and at that edge they might also engage in some form of agriculture. And it has to be said that this distinction between villagers and Bedouin isn't completely clear-cut, but in general we can simplify. You have the villagers and the Bedouin as the two livelihoods, relying on agriculture and relying on roaming and nomadic herding. So since the creation of the Mandate of Transjordan in 1921 by the then British Empire, and subsequently after the independence of Jordan as the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in 1946, the Hashemite family, which came to rule Jordan, successively settled the Bedouin in an effort to assert their rule over the Bedouin, which were essentially ruling the country until then. Successively settled them on the edge of the desert in small little communities, villages, and replaced their pretty much resilient and independent desert lifestyle with positions in government offices, in the army, or in other public institutions, thus essentially robbing them of this independent lifestyle and placing them into a position of dependence and forced loyalty, you could say. So that created obviously an opportunity for population growth, and then was accompanied by an immense influx of refugees into Jordan, first with the creation of the State of Israel in 1948 and the subsequent two wars of 67 and 73, and much later in 2003 from the other side after the start of the Iraq War, which altogether leads to a situation where now Jordan is over 2/3 of its population is from a refugee background. So all of this led to the creation of more and more urban, unsustainable urban communities in camps and cities. And of course, in order to meet the needs, the growing needs of these ever more urbanized population, the Jordan's trade, industry, and industrialized farming developed immensely throughout the 20th century. Of course, all of that based on the import of cheap fossil fuels from the neighboring Arab states, because Jordan essentially doesn't have many fossil fuel resources. Now at the beginning of the 21st century, Jordan finds itself in a position where it imports over 90% of its energy, the majority of its grain for staple foods, rice and bread, and a vast portion of the workforce in agriculture and construction, but also some other sectors. On top of that, Jordan uses over 200% of its annually available renewable freshwater resources, and 70% of all these resources go to an increasingly unsustainable and increasingly industrialized agricultural sector, 70%. Two practices particularly show how this agricultural sector is quite unsustainable. One is the continued growth of banana production in the Jordan Valley. A considerable portion of the lands, especially of the southern Jordan Valley, are planted with bananas, which use about 1.4 cubic meters of water to produce 1 single kilogram of bananas. The other practice is that all the ingredients that could be turned, all the agricultural waste that could be turned into compost, are regularly on a large scale either burnt or thrown away, while the soils are begging for carbon and are being degenerated. All these ingredients like banana leaves, vegetable leaves, manure, and so on are not used at all for compost. But despite all this, it's important to remember that the period in which Jordan enjoyed relative sustainability and high levels of resilience is only about a generation ago. A friend of ours told us a story about his grandfather who lived in Irbid in the north of Jordan. He said, if you would look up my grandfather back in his time, in his house, he could survive for like 2 months or more. He had his water well, he had stored food, dried food, pickled food, and so on. And he says, if you would look me up now in Amman in my house, I couldn't survive more than 2 days if I can't go to the supermarket. So we see how fast this progression happened over just about 1 generation or 2 generations. And while this period of resilience is still very much present in living memory, the young generation have little or no awareness of the importance of the near complete loss of this resilience, and don't seem to care much about it. In fact, many see it as a progress towards a more developed society. And what makes all of these developments even more severe is that Jordan has started to see the first impacts of climate change over the last 10 years, mostly with severe and repeated droughts, which have only exacerbated the processes of soil erosion and desertification that are already happening, partly caused by unsustainable farming practices and overgrazing. So it's clear that Jordan has a growing need for awareness about and also for the practice of more sustainable forms of land use, such as regenerative agriculture or permaculture. Many ways, traditional ways, used to preserve biodiversity, take care of soil, conserve water, look after nature in general, and going all the way back to the Nabateans, who used to be masters in water harvesting. A lot of these traditional ways have been lost or are being forgotten right now. And with looking into the future in a time of the end of cheap oil and with ever more adverse effects of climate change, the already dire ecological situation in Jordan is set to only become worse, unfortunately. So that only shows that it's time to bring more sustainable ways, more regenerative ways to Jordan. And here we are again. Joe. Yes. So we hope that you enjoyed this little introduction. And what's next?
Well, next we are going to go to our friend William's house in the Jordan Valley, which is becoming a center for sustainable living and a permaculture garden demonstration plots.
That's the next episode?
That is.
And there'll be more episodes to come, and you better watch everything on this fantastic new YouTube channel. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Bye.
Bye.